Good morning, lovely people of Facebook. Welcome to my live conversation with the magnificent Pete Wharmby. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Heidi Mavir. I'm the founder of Autistic Matters, and I'm the author of Your Child Is Not Broken. And Pete is the author of Untypical. And so we thought we'd have a conversation today about being autistic and being an author and what that's like. I should pre-warn you, Pete, we'll get angry faces. That's because my audience know that that's good for the algorithm. Don't take it personally. Don't let the
okay. God, thanks for warning me, because honestly, that would really...
My audience are well trained in how to drive the algorithm, and one of the things we do is angry face the heck out of it when we first go live.
Right.
Facebook like a bit of controversy, as we know.
Yes.
So anyone that wants to chip in the comments and say hi to Pete or ask any questions or anything, we're just going to have a conversation about our experiences as late identified autistic people who wrote books, because we know that lots of people in the community are kind of interested in that as a process, and we just thought it might be nice to have a chat.
Yeah.
And it was also fun because I messaged Pete and said, "Are you all right just to wing it?" And he was like, "Yeah." And I was like, we're totally breaking all the rules of what autistic people do, where people think that we need everything planned to the minutiae detail. But you're a winger as well, right?
I am, yeah. I mean, I pin that on being ADHD as well. So, for me, it's either one or the other. I go all out to plan something, to a ridiculous degree if I've got the time, or I just don't, and just
same
hope for the best,
So give us a little bit of background about you and the book and how it came about, because it's done phenomenally well, right? We've both done all right. We've written books.
Yeah, it's not too bad. I'm never happy, It's basically an impossibility for me. But yeah, I mean, it's done okay. It sold some copies and people seem to like it, and it hasn't generated quite as much annoyance as I thought it might, because it doesn't seem that you can write anything about autism without upsetting somebody. So that was always a real fear for me, that I was going to cause ripples like that, but it doesn't appear to have caused much at all, really. Yeah, it came about very passively, really, on my part. I mean, I was diagnosed in 2017, and then I started tweeting about it in 2019, I think, once I'd kind of got my head around it a bit and learned a bit about it. I didn't, I did some blog posts and a little bit of tweeting earlier on, but I was quickly kind of felt bad because I didn't feel like I'd done the homework. I wanted
Is your early content really cringy? Like when you look at it now, because I look back at some of the stuff I was saying in the early days, and I'm like, oh my God, I hope no one ever finds this.
Yeah, I mean, the worst thing, I was diagnosed with Asperger's. Probably one of the last people in the UK, at least, to have that. So I talked about that an awful lot in the very early days, and then of course, we've moved past that, generally speaking, as a community. And I don't tend to identify as Asperger's anymore. I'm not keen on it as a term. I'm not keen on what its connotations, etc. But apart from that, no. I mean, I've always been very, very careful. I've always tried my very best never to overgeneralize or anything like that. I mean, it's very difficult not to. You've got to generalize a little bit because we're talking about more than one person. But I've always tried really hard not to cause problems, or speak over people or anything like that. I've always tried to be as reasonable as I possibly can be. So yeah, even the early stuff wasn't too bad, I guess. But I don't do it so much these days. Twitter for me is dead now, as far as I'm concerned. I barely go on there. I do a little bit on LinkedIn these days, a little, every now and then, and Instagram. But anyway, yeah. So sorry, just going off on a tangent.
Cool, don't worry. We're on the ADHD train. Let's just ride it. Go.
So yeah, 2019 came and I started writing more on Twitter, and I started getting that big following that was a blessing and a curse in so many different ways. And people approached me about writing books, based on what I was tweeting about. And yeah, that's basically where both of my books kind of stemmed from. in both cases, I had publishers come to me and say, do you want to write a book? And I was like, okay, fair enough, if that's what you want me to do. So yeah, I mean, the first book was sorted out in like 2020. That was feels like a long time ago now. Of course, that was with Jessica Kingsley, and the second book was obviously more recent, and that was HarperCollins. But I got an agent in between, which changed things, considerably.
Interesting. I don't have an agent.
Do you not?
No.
It's not easy to get one. I mean, I looked out, as I often have.
I've not even looked for one. I'm such a control freak. Like, I only have a publisher because they offered me loads of money. Like, I was like, nice. No, I'm fine on my own. Thank you very much. But then they said, well, we can get you in Waterstones. And I was like, oh, okay then.
Yeah. That's...
And we'll give you a bit of money. But yeah, it's interesting, isn't it? Because I think, how did you find the writing experience as, like, how neurodivergent friendly did you find it? Because I did it all self-published. My first edition of the book was self-published, so it was like self-directed, and I was working with a writing coach and a self-publishing a really excellent self-publishing coach called Abby Horn, who is incredible. But I did have deadlines, but they were like self-set and I could move them. And how was it like? Because I imagine it was a little bit different, was it, when the publishers are like, okay, so we need this by this date and this by this date?
Yeah, very, very, very set deadlines. And me being me, I took it all at face value, which I've learned since that I didn't need to. Apparently, it's expected that you'll miss deadlines. Apparently, it's okay to go way over your word count. It's just another example of those unwritten laws and unwritten rules that nobody, I stuck with it. I was like, well, I better not upset anyone, so I will get it in exactly when it's meant to be. So yeah, I met all my deadlines, but the writing process for me is very, very difficult because I don't tend to write for very prolonged periods at all. I write in, it's probably fair to say that I write in sort of 10, 20-minute bursts.
Right. Yeah. That sounds about right for me too. Yeah.
Yeah. Any longer than that, and I quite simply get bored. There's no two ways about it. I lose kind of focus and I want to do something else. And, I just my motivation drains very quickly. And I'm just like, I'm going to stop. And becoming okay with that was a big part of the process. I had to, because I figured that was the wrong way to do it. It felt the wrong way. It felt like, when people talk about writing books, they talk about, sitting there at their computer,
going to a little cottage in the woods and holding exactly. Writing your book. Yeah.
That's the narrative. You sit down and you focus and you're at it hour after hour after hour. So I always felt like I was screwing it up, basically. Like, I'm not doing this properly at all. This is going to be dreadful. I can't.
Which is the neurodivergent experience, right?
It is, yeah.
I don't feel like I have enough information. I don't feel like I'm doing it the way I should be. People are going to be annoyed. They're going to drag me outside, put me in a bag, and kick me to death. Like,
exactly. Pretty much, yeah.
Going to jump to the awfulizing. Yeah, totally. I was the same. Go on. Sorry.
Yeah. So for me, a big part of the experience, and I think I kind of started to come to terms with this with the first book, was that it was okay to write like that. I had to really tell myself that it's okay to do that, because otherwise I would never have got them done. I would have just given up. And that was very difficult because, these narratives are very strong. They're very potent and powerful, and it's very difficult to kind of, feel confident in going against them, and feel confident in doing it differently.
The way to do things.
Exactly. Yeah. And I've always been very deeply aware of the proper way to do stuff. And, because my way of doing things is so often improper for so many different reasons, mostly because of neurodivergency. That's been a constant problem for me, to be honest. Like my entire life, everything that I've ever done, I never felt like I've ever done anything the way it's meant to be done.
Right.
Like I never felt like I was teaching the right way. I always felt like I was teaching wrongly, and any moment I'm going to be found out and caught out, because I couldn't sit and mark for hour after hour after hour like a lot of teachers do. So whenever people were talking about their their teaching workload, I was always like, oh God, I do it differently, and I'm kind of doing it in short bursts and being a bit late sometimes, so yeah, you just can't, well, if you're like me and you're a bit neurotic, you just feel constantly like you're not doing things properly, you're going to get caught out, and yeah, you'll be taken outside and put in a bag and beaten up.
That's the thing, isn't it? It's like it's not, for me, it's not just like a little bit of discomfort about getting things wrong and like feeling silly. It feels dangerous
Yes, exactly. Yeah.
to do things when the narrative is this is how things are done. It feels dangerous to not be doing it that way, and you question yourself. And I think when you've been late diagnosed, I think both of us were well into our 30s or 40s when we were diagnosed. I'm assuming, Pete, I don't want to make any
yeah, I was 34, so yeah.
Okay, cool. And I was 46, so yeah, 45. So when you've got like to our age without having permission to like own your own neurotype, to own your own way of doing things, when you've not been validated and it's okay to do things differently, when you've spent your whole life being like, this isn't my way of doing things, but this is the right way of doing things, and I have to do it this way because the consequence, the social cost of not being like everyone else is just too risky. And then there's also a lot of kind of like guilt and shame tied up in that as well, isn't there? And being, like you say, being found out. And I think, I know we don't talk about different types of autism, but when you are an autistic person who is, who can pass, I guess is the best way of putting it, who is highly masked and, intelligent and debatable, but, and me, not you, and, is able to kind of like get by, and not obviously autistic, there's quite a lot that goes with that in terms of the protections you put in place for yourself for not letting that slip. And you don't, there's quite a lot of ableism wrapped up in the whole, well, I need to do it this way. So it's really interesting that as a writer, you had that experience, because I had the same. Like I went on holiday to write my book. And I still didn't get written on holiday. I did a bit of writing, but same as you, I write in quite short bursts. And I tend to write based on other content. So I tend to, my natural way of communicating is speaking. Although I do really enjoy writing, and I, did a literature degree, I find that if I listen to myself speaking about something, I can pick out the turns of phrase that I want to use, and then I write. But, like that historical idea of you sit down at a typewriter and you write, and then you redraft and you write again and you redraft, you write again, and I started going, okay, so now you should be on your draft. And I was like, shit, I've not written a word. I've been thinking about it for 6 months. I've got lots of notes in my phone and I've not written anything. And now you should be at your final drafting proofing stage. I'm like, fuck, I've written 2 chapters. So that was an interesting experience. But I hope that the fact that both of us have done it a different way, and we've both had successful books, should be a message that it's okay to do things differently, because it's what people want ultimately. If they get what they want from you, which is the work, kind of how you get there is not. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I mean, to be honest, the way that you get there shouldn't matter, should it?
No.
Just generally, even ignoring neurodiversity, just should not matter at all. As long as it's produced, who cares? But yeah, the narrative is so strong. But yeah, I feel like I'm gonna allow myself to write in the way that I do now. Just because, I know that it kind of works.
It works.
It's interesting what you said about speaking, because, again, I'm very much, I mean, I love writing, but talking comes easier to me. I think, I find that when I'm writing, I just literally, I write what I would be saying,
Yes.
I get myself into a situation where I'm kind of imagining, I'm literally just typing down, hearing myself talk.
Yeah.
And I think that that's probably what adds, because a lot of people say that it feels like a very chatty book.
I think your book and my book are quite similar in tone. They're quite conversational. And there has been, I don't know if you've had this, but I've had criticism of that. I've had like, it's too informal. It's just like somebody like people. The first edition was quite short. Again, a thing I struggled with. I was like, people were like, oh, books are 40,000 words. I was like, I reckon I've got 10, 12 in me at a push. And the editor was like, just write what you need to write. And if you can say it in fewer words, say it in fewer words, we'll print it as you want it, and then when we went for the republish, I was like, okay, I feel like a bit more confident. I feel I could write some more now, and then wrote another 10,000 words. But I think what's really interesting about that is, I've lost my train of thought, is the conversation. Oh yeah, people saying, oh, it's not really a proper book. It's just someone telling us what they think. You're like, what do you think books are? Like, exactly. What were you hoping for from a book written by an autistic person, aside from that it would be a book by an autistic person? I thought it's how have you managed with that? Have you had negative reviews?
Oh God, yeah. Mostly from people telling either not believing that I'm autistic. That's a very common thing. I get that a lot from a small group of people. It actually happened just before this. I noticed on Twitter somebody had written a thread about how I was faking it, and it hurts, because it cuts deep. It really, really does. And I think they know that, which is probably why they keep doing it, But so I've had a few reviews along those lines. They're up on Amazon. You can find them if you want to, see the kind of thing that people are capable of writing. But other ones are just kind of, this isn't my experience of autism, therefore I'm going to rate this book very low. That kind of thing, which I think most autistic authors will have experienced. Every autistic author that I've ever spoken to has had that review, often almost word for word. It's like, this isn't how this is my autism, therefore it's not right. You can handle that. That's fine. That's absolutely fine. If what I've written doesn't speak to you in that way, then that's fair enough. If your experience of autism is different to mine and what I'm talking about, then absolutely, go for it. That's not.
And that's kind of why we're writing, right? Is to illustrate that we're all different. And
exactly. Yeah.
First and foremost, what connects us is our humanity, not our neurotype. And trying to humanize ourselves and break through some of those stereotypes. So of course our experiences aren't going to be the same.
Exactly. And I made that, I always go out of my way to make that clear, because that was something that I experienced early on in Twitter, the danger of overgeneralizing and being too certain about things.
Be a bit too autistic about it.
Well, yeah, to be honest, I've learned very much that, you have to use those qualifiers like some, might, often, but they're so important because our experiences are so varied. And there's even a disclaimer in the introduction of Untypical just saying, I am not seeking to speak for autistic people here. This is my experience and the experience of people I've spoken to, and just be really, really open and clear about that, because no one wants to feel that they're being spoken for, in any field.
Absolutely.
So I think it is important, but people still get upset.
I found it quite interesting that because even though your book is very polite, and that's a compliment, by the way, it's and again, this is a compliment, it's palatable, it's in all the best ways. Suzanne said here, I really enjoyed Untypical. I've given it to some of my neurotypical family members to give them an insight into the workings of the autistic mind. It's really, I think your book is like a great read for, well, it's a great read for all people, but it is particularly a great read for people who have autistic people in their life and just need to cut through some of the bullshit,
Absolutely. That's what it's for. That's the purpose of the book, fundamentally.
And it doesn't shy away from being like, this is rubbish, and this is rubbish for autistic people, and you need to listen because it's really rubbish. It doesn't shy away from that. But I also think it's very interesting when some of the criticism that I had was that mine isn't as polite, is that it's a bit sweary. My favorite ever review was that most undignified. In fact, I think my next book will be called Most Undignified. But also what was really interesting for me was the experience of getting bad reviews that I really hadn't prepared myself for, was the spiral of RSD, the rejection sensitivity that came with that. and the shame and the fear and the triggering nature of, especially when people were like, because in Your Child Is Not Broken, I speak quite openly about our experiences, and in particular about my experiences in mental health and having a period of wanting to unalive. And people coming and saying, oh, this woman, all she does is whinge. It's just one person's experience. And you're like, my God, I wrote a book about how I didn't want to be here anymore. And this is what you want to tell me about what you think about it? Like, it was really, it took me back to that place where, you know, as a child, having big feelings about things and not being allowed to express them, and actually being actively told not to feel big, not to say things, not to show up differently.
That's how it feels. Yeah, because at school, you know, I was, one of the reasons that I believe I wasn't picked up, you know, was because I was vanishingly sort of withdrawn. You know, I just went into the background and survived.
You were no trouble.
Yeah, I had a couple of friends. I never got in any trouble. I never, ever, ever wanted to raise my head above the parapet at all. Just, I've never wanted to do that. And now, foolishly, I have, you know, and all you get, you know, along with, you know, it's annoying because I've had so many good reviews, so many.
Yeah.
And I appreciate every single one, because every single one is somebody taking time out of their day to write down about how, you know, how they felt about the book and be really kind and nice about it. But it's the bad ones that just lodge like a 100%. Tick in your brain.
100%.
Yeah.
That was a really interesting experience for me, because the first bad review I did not take well. And I responded publicly. And then it went really badly wrong.
I did the same until somebody said to me, take that down now. And I was like, okay. But yeah, because you just can't, you know, unfortunately, we do not have the right to reply.
No, I had a battle in the Amazon reviews section where someone just kept putting up crappy reviews, and I would ask Amazon to take them down because they were personal attacks.
Yes, I've had the same. And
Amazon would take it down. They put another one up that was even more personal and even more attacking, and actually spilled into the last time transphobia, and it was horrible. I had to get the publisher on it, but this person just was not happy that they'd written a shitty review, and I was like, you're a twat. But I probably learned from that experience that it's better to be a little bit less undignified in your response.
It's best to just be detached. I mean, unless, like you say, they are personal.
Yeah.
In which case, Amazon will take them down because they're not relevant to the you know, nobody.
It's not a book review. Yeah.
No,
yeah,
it's it's a personal attack, and unfortunately, anyone that's got any kind of public facing kind of, you know, anything at all, and known in any way, even small amounts, ends up attracting that kind of thing. It's just the way it goes, unfortunately. And I mean, I'm saying this very magnanimously. I hate it and I can't stand it, and it makes me miserable for days on end, you know, but I try my best. I mean, I haven't looked at the reviews on Goodreads at all. I decided that early. I just didn't look, and I haven't looked since. I've got no idea what it's rated on Goodreads. Don't really want to know. I got it
to each other.
Yeah, even that.
I'll look at yours.
I'd feel dreadful. I would feel dreadful. I wouldn't be able to tell you, you know, because I know what.
No, it's all right.
Yeah, but at the Amazon reviews, I do keep an eye on, because I just like to see the stars go from 5 to 4.5 to 5 to 4.5 all the time. It's just fun.
Yeah, skating around an average 4.7.
Yeah. I've managed to creep up to 4.8, but all it will take is another two or 1 star, and it'll drag.
We're like a Black Mirror episode, aren't we? To each other.
But it is unhelpful, you know, and it's unhealthy, and I really probably ought to stop doing it, because ultimately the book's out there and people will take from it what they will, and if they want to not like it, that's their call. I can't attack them for that. Like I say, the only thing I would stand up to is personal stuff.
Yeah.
Because like you don't know me.
No, exactly.
So yeah, but it's difficult because RSD, which I think I experience, causes such a spiral of self-hate and depression and all sorts of things that yeah, you know, the idea of being this quiet person at school. I mean, I've told this a couple of times now, but there was a really kind of illustrative moment of just how much I did this when I was in year 11. Somebody in my class, somebody in my tutor group, thought it would be funny to do a kind of caricature for everyone in the tutor group. They were quite a good artist, but you can imagine how cutting this was.
Oh my God!
You know, it was
my worst nightmare. Yeah,
yeah. So certain people in the class were eviscerated, by this comic style. His take of me, it was a picture of me looking fairly just standard, normal, standing at a fireplace with a jacket on, with a pipe, just staying out of everyone's business. And it was like, yeah, that stuck with me, because I think that's how I came across. I was just aloof and separate, and I didn't bother anyone, and I didn't cause any ripples or problems. And I've always been like that. I just want to survive. I just want to get through life, and without causing any issues.
Yeah, you don't want to make any trouble.
No.
You don't want to risk it, do you? You don't want to risk the social isolation or the social danger.
No, definitely.
Suzanne says, I think I've spent every single day of my adult working life crippled by the fear of being found out to be a faker, but I didn't know what they were doing. Yeah. Interesting as well, actually. I don't know if you had this experience when you started writing the book, or when you were writing the book, going through the process of being published. I was reminded of this recently because I worked in corporate for years, and I would sometimes find myself in places in corporate environments and thinking, none of these buggers know what they're doing. But I thought that they did. And it was the same with publishing. Not that people didn't know what they were doing. My publishers are amazing, but just kind of a bit like, oh, okay, so no one really has this together. Like, people are missing deadlines and forgetting to send emails and misspelling my name on press releases, and that's like this kind of like, I suppose the experience as a neurodivergent person of thinking that everybody else does know what's happening and has a rule book that we haven't had sight of, and actually in reality there's a lot of people who don't know what's going on.
They just seem to be awfully good at appearing like they know what's going on, don't they? Which I suppose is just another form of masking, which is interesting.
And do you feel like I'll look at some comments in a minute, but do you feel like, because your mask, it sounds like, was quite different to mine. So as a child, I wasn't invisible. Like my nickname as a kid was Foghorn. Like, I was loud. Like, I don't have an inside voice. I know that's a neurodivergent thing, but I definitely don't have an inside voice. And I was outspoken, and I was, visible. And I lived in a household where, like, if you didn't make a noise, you didn't get fed. Not in a neglectful way, but our house was very busy. My mum and my dad were both unidentified neurodivergent adults. And so there were people in and out of our house all the time. It was crazy, frantic, busy. And I was very studious. So I had that awful thing where I was impossible to ignore and also very academic. So I was a real target for bullies.
Yes.
But I didn't, my mask was, I don't care. My mask was, you can't touch me. My mask was, tell me as much as you want that you don't like me. I'm going to pretend it doesn't bother me. It did bother me. My God, did it bother me. I used to come home and like pray. That's how different I was then. Please just give me one friend and then I won't ask for anything else. Like, and I remember my son saying to me, not that long ago, like when he was in primary school, I don't need a lot of friends, but I'd like one. I'm like, oh my God, my heart,
Yeah.
But it sounds like your mask was a little bit more, without being disrespectful, you were a bit more invisible.
Yeah, absolutely. That was the aim, really. Even, looking back, I'm not sure how conscious it was, but I certainly feel like that's what I was trying to go for. All I ever wanted, really, when I was a kid at school, was to get through the day without incident, so that I could then go home and get on with the things that I really cared about.
You wanted to do.
Yeah, which was, at that point it was Lego and playing on my Mega Drive or my N64 and reading my books about things that fascinated me, special interests, that's all I cared about. That's all I really wanted. So for me, I just, I saw school as just a slightly irritating barrier that I just, I could have gone either way. I could have, that could have led to anger and causing a fuss, like it does for a lot of autistic students. I don't want to be here, so I'm going kind of attitude.
Yeah.
But I think my base level personality is so kind of quiet anyway, that I went the other way, just to keep my head down, getting through it. It'll all be over soon, kind of thing. And 3 o'clock comes and off I go. And that was how I survived. And it's because of that I'm very lucky that I wasn't targeted by bullies much. I had a few problems here and there over the years, but I wasn't a good target because I just vanished. I went home for lunch. So I was never there for that. I always lived fairly close to the school. So I went home, to see my mum, and we'd have soup and cheese sandwiches every single lunchtime, and so I was never really around anyway. And I didn't stay after school. I didn't do extracurricular stuff very much. I just melted into the background, and survived that way.
Yeah.
Which, it worked quite well. But obviously no one was ever going to suspect that I was autistic or ADHD, because why would they? Because I was just this quiet, relatively capable kid, just who I think most teachers probably forgot, to be honest.
Yeah. And I think I got by on the teachers liked me because I was funny, and I could have adult conversations. I always got on way better with adults.
Yes, that's true.
So the kids, the teachers, and I was very eager to please, so they could send me on errands and I'd deliver every time. They could leave classrooms with me in charge, and I would nothing would get broken apart from maybe me. But they would, and I was very studious. I was really eager to please. I loved learning, so I think I was a bit of a dream student in that respect. But socially, I was freaking miserable. I was so miserable. It was awful. But then I think it's interesting that, because we only get identified or diagnosed as children, I think, when we cause significant inconvenience, often in education settings.
Sadly, that tends to be the pattern, yes.
Yeah, it doesn't sound like either of us were particularly inconvenient. So
no, that's it. There would have been no, even if adults around me found me to be unusual, which I know that they did. I mean, I remember very vividly my aunt, after reading my first book, my auntie messaged me and said that, when I was young, she'd never met any kid like me, that I was a very unusual child, but in a way that was, inoffensive and not causing any real problems. So therefore, fuck it. Just, let them get on with it kind of attitude,
we use it in our house too, but I was often referred to as, "Oh, you're a funny onion." It wasn't like people weren't horrified by me, but I think people thought that I was unusual and a bit odd. But same as you. Oh, they're not doing any harm. Leave them to it.
I think it's all those things that are fairly standard autistic trait. I know that I spoke differently to most kids, both in terms of tone and maturity and vocabulary. Things, and I wasn't interested in the same kind of stuff at all. And my info dumping was pretty legendary, I think.
Mine too.
That I've got a very vivid memory of being probably about 7 or 8 years old, and I built a Lego Titanic out of just bits that I got, unlike the real one that now exists in this wonderful
my
world
son saw it in the back of one of your pictures and he was like, "Oh my god, he's got the Titanic."
It's quite a thing. But I built one out like multicolored bricks, and it was my pride and joy, and I put so much work into it, and I was so desperate to talk about it to people. And my parents had friends over in the living room, they were drinking tea or whatever they were doing, in their adult world. And I remember standing at the doorway with this Lego Titanic. I wasn't able to go in because that was too scary, and I didn't want to impose on them, always desperate to please and be polite. I didn't want to impose on them, so I just stood in the doorway, just hoping that one of them would notice and ask me, because I saw if I was asked, that was an invitation then to do what I wanted to do so desperately, which is tell everyone.
It's like a vampire.
Yeah, it is. It's literally like a vampire. If I'm invited to speak, then I'm allowed then to just go bleh and tell them everything that I know about this thing. And you know, my childhood was full of stuff like that. You know, I never wanted to impose on people. I wasn't confident enough to, you know, just speak up. I had to be asked, you know, and I'm the same now. You know, I didn't go out of my way to get my books published. I had to be asked. You know, somebody had to come and ask me. I would never have like been strong enough or confident enough to have gone to a publisher and say, hey, I've got an idea for a book. You know, I can't do that. I can't do that. It's a wonder that I'm able to survive, to be honest, because, you know, my ability to sell myself is so weak, you know, so incredibly weak.
Your default setting is, oh, I'm sorry about me.
Yes. I'm so sorry I exist. I truly am. I wish I didn't, because quite frankly, it's been a tremendous inconvenience, but here I am. So, you know, I do apologize. You know,
let me know if I can talk to you about my Lego.
Yes, but yeah, if you ask.
No trouble if not.
Yes, I mean, who is it? There's somebody writing. Oh, who's writing a book? It's called something like No Worries If Not. I can't remember who it was. Somebody's writing a book called No Worries If Not, and I love that title because that title is me. Yeah. No worries if not. I desperately need this thing, and I want you to do this thing now. Like, you haven't paid me, and I sent my invoice in 6 months ago. Please pay me. No worries if not.
Oh my God,
I am my own worst enemy. You know. It's awful.
Yeah. Let me read some comments. Shan says, you're both amazing. Without your honesty, so many of us would still be struggling with, as you've said, the twats. I don't think, well, you might have used that word. I would definitely have used that
yeah. I mean, I went for very kind of precision swearing in Untypical. My natural default is to swear constantly.
Same.
So, but I try to, you know, rein that in, you know.
Part of my unmasking has been to embrace my potty mouth.
Yeah.
And to the point that some people are like, she swears a lot. Well, yes, I fucking do.
To be honest with you, there are two things that are really kind of key measures for me about whether I'll be able to deal with a person, like, you know, work with them or talk with them or be friends with them or whatever, is do they swear, and what's their sense of humor like? You know, because for whatever reason, they're just really important to me. I feel like I can trust swearers.
They're social connectors, though, aren't they? They're like, if someone swears, like, and I don't mean like, not that I don't like Danny Dyer, but I don't mean like in a Danny Dyer kind of like, you know, like blustery. But if someone has like that kind of freedom in the way they speak, for me, and I know that different people feel differently about swearing, but for me, they're more trustworthy, because I just kind of feel like, oh, you're okay with breaking convention. You're okay with like not really being socially acceptable. Yeah, that works for me. Like, I feel a bit safer with you.
Exactly. And that's what it is. It's safety. You know, do I feel safe around you? You know, and somebody who's freely swearing and has a bit of a dark sense of humor. I don't know. I just feel in it a bit more comfortable, you know, because it's just the way it works. Because, you know, I think a lot of autistic people have tremendously strong radars of, is this person okay? Like, all right, is this going to end horribly? You know, that kind of, you know, just sonar constantly going on.
Yeah, we're constantly on the hunt for red flags, aren't we?
Yeah, we've had so many bad experiences, you know, that we're just, trying to avoid anymore.
Yeah, certainly, definitely. Sharon says, same here. My husband hates my potty mouth. He says, you never used to swear this much. I said, yeah, because I was fucking masking. Yeah. So I'm going to ask you this question, but before I do that, I wanted to ask you about the mask thing. So do you feel like, it's interesting that this is what I'm, from what you've just said, your kind of default is no worries if not, and like that politeness, and that like not wanting to upset people or inconvenience people. You're just a genuinely nice chap, slash fearful that you'll be socially that's whichever of those it is, ostracized. But I'm guessing, and correct me if I'm wrong, that you may be less masked than you used to be. Does that mean you're less concerned with that, or is that so much part? What my question is, do you feel that masks are extensions of our natural personality rather than actually being, I know, right? Rather than being a a fake persona, because that's something I've thought about. Like, my mask is, it's still very me, and it's not intentionally different to me, although it's parts of me that are safe. Discuss.
Oh, thanks. I think it's got to be, because we, especially for those of us that do it for such a long time, there's got to be something there that enables us to maintain it. So it would make sense if what's there is at least some authenticity, that it is just a, and like I said earlier, I could have gone different ways, but I didn't. I went the way that I did, and I feel like I went the way that does match my personality. I think I am, I mean, I've never met an autistic person that doesn't have that fear of, oh God, what if I'm not really a nice person? What if I'm actually just manipulating everyone around me all the time, which is, of course, what a lot of autistic people are accused of, because of the way that we manage conversations. But I think deep down, I don't want to upset anybody. I desperately don't. I hate the thought of putting someone out or upsetting them or making them sad or whatever it might be. And when it happens, I feel dreadful, and etc., etc., etc. So I think that it's natural, therefore, that my mask would be very much aligned with that, really. And as I start to unmask, I'm finding that the only thing that I'm doing more these days is saying no.
Nice.
My people pleasing now no longer extends to doing things that I don't want to do. I'm far more likely now to say no, can't do that, or sorry, I'm gonna have to cancel because I literally can't handle that now for whatever reason, and feeling less guilty about that. So I have adapted slightly, but I'm still just as likely to, say no worries if not, or whatever. Because to be quite honest with you, genuinely, I really mean it. And until the situation becomes utterly dreadful, like the unpaid invoice. So long as I'm okay and I don't necessarily need that money immediately, I'm okay with it taking time. I don't want to rattle any cages, I'm fine with that going. So yeah, I think ultimately I am quite easygoing. I think probably the fundamental kind of thing in me that
You're
I don't.
Generally nice chap.
Well, and like I say, I don't know whether that is.
Put that on the cover of your next book if you like.
Yeah, just nice man. But I am very easygoing. I don't expect people to go out of their way for me at all. I don't expect necessarily special treatment. I really struggle with asking for reasonable adjustments, because I just want everyone as far as possible to have the easiest day that they can. I'd be a very good stoner. I really would. I mean, I'm not, and I never really have been, but I think I would fit that very, very well. That kind of general sense of it's fine. But I've just never kind of got into that culture. But,
never had the commitment to cannabis as a special interest. This is a good question. So Suzanne says, did your experiences as a kid at school influence your approach as a teacher towards the quiet, possibly neurodivergent kids you taught?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. Every minute of every day that I was teaching, I was remembering what it was like being back at school and trying not to make the mistakes that those teachers had made, if that makes sense. Like I was hyper aware all the time. And very often if I did, for example, lose my temper, or tell the wrong person off or something like that, I would apologize. I think that's fair to say. I mean, I might be wrong, but I think I tended to apologize, and say, well, so, fair enough, sorry. Because I didn't want to make the kids uncomfortable either. I didn't want to make them sad or angry or
well, contrary to popular belief, people who get into teaching do generally like children and young people.
I mean,
there are some people in the system that would make us think otherwise, but generally, people who get
generally speaking,
it's a calling and a vocation, isn't it? Because they want to do right by kids and young people. So
I saw a big part of my job was, I guess, subconsciously, I wanted, if there were kids in my class who were like me as a kid, who just wanted to get through the day, I wanted to help them do that. I wanted to give them every opportunity to be able to just get through the day, so I wasn't very hot on homeworks. I wasn't hugely, upset with kids talking back or with kids who didn't want to participate. I became very good at trying to figure out whether they were engaged, even if they didn't look it.
Mm-hmm.
Because I know that I often wouldn't have looked engaged because I would often have been doodling or something like that because that's how my brain works. So I became, even very early on as a teacher, I became very good, I think, at working out, is this kid engaged but just doesn't look it, or are they truly not engaged? And even then, if they're truly not engaged, well, why?
Why?
Rather than just, how dare you? How dare you ignore me? Or
How rude, how disrespectful.
It was more of a case of, oh shit, there's something I can do here. There must be something I can do to connect. So I would try.
Yeah.
And you don't always succeed. You can't always succeed. I mean, God, kids have got so much going on in their lives, that you can't always connect, and sometimes they just won't like you, and sometimes they just won't like the subject or the content, and that's fair enough. A bit like with my book. If you don't like it, fair enough,
No worries if not.
no worries if not. But ultimately, if I could reach them, I would, gladly.
Yeah.
And that's how I got through being a teacher, and but it meant that I was very often, it used to cause me such problems because people would say to me, like in meetings, how are you managing to get this kid to do stuff? Like, what are you doing? What's the magic bullet? And I'd just be like, I don't bloody know. I have no fucking clue. Certainly nothing I can distill down.
I can't teach you it.
Yeah, like, I don't know. I talk to them.
I'm not an asshole.
But honestly, it was really, really difficult. And it fed this thing of, you're not doing it properly.
Yeah. Oh my God. Yes.
Because people were saying, what techniques, what strategies are you undergoing with this child? And I was like, none, literally none. I'm not doing anything other than I talk to them about their special interests if they have one. I talk to them like an adult, not in, I talk to them like they're mature and capable human beings.
You don't baby them. Yeah.
I explain exactly why it is we're doing what we're doing, so they understand why we're doing it, rather than just expect them to, I don't know, just go along with it for whatever reason. And I just wanted to treat them like bloody human beings, and I couldn't distill anything down into anything more pithy than that. And as such, I felt like a fraud again. Always. So yeah.
I guess the thing. Sorry to overspeak. The interesting thing about that is that the frustration that there will have been within the system is that, well, we can't do it. We can't all do it that way because we need to know we're all doing it exactly the same way.
That was the thing. Yeah, and I was always scared I was going to get into trouble because they would say things like, the what's the word? The policy in the school. For example, if someone, I don't know, forgets their pen, the policy in the school is that, that they get a mark against their name or whatever. Now, for me, there were two problems with this. Number one, I would always fucking forget.
I was going to say.
Always, like, I'm trying to survive myself here, and I'm not going to remember all this admin at all. I didn't know I was ADHD, but now I do. And I'm not going to remember to do that. And secondly, they've probably forgotten their bloody pen for a reason. And unless I've got a very strong belief that they're forgetting their pen to wind me up, which is actually very rare. I mean, it happens. There are some kids who delight
the right to ask,
everything.
There aren't that many of them.
Not really. And even then, they're actually often quite funny and actually quite like them. But usually there's some good reason for them forgetting their pen all the time. And I'm not going to start having a go at them for that. It's the same as bloody attendance records. As a form tutor, my job was to phone parents, when attendance dropped below a certain level. And it was always horrific, always, because the poor parents were petrified often, and when you think about how many neurodivergent parents, unidentified neurodivergent parents are going to be out there, who are just getting by through the skin of their teeth in the whole parenting world. And, the last thing they need is some official body contacting them with a complaint. You are failing your child. I mean, bloody hell. If your kid's poorly, your kid's poorly, and not being funny, but if you're neurodivergent, illness can hit hard.
Oh, yeah.
It can hit bloody hard. You get a cold and it's horrible.
Yeah.
Everything sensory rushes up, everything to do with heat and texture, and you block nose, and everything
and
just
pain, and
it's ramped up.
Balance, the whole thing.
People don't consider that at all. And yeah, I just did not want to be part of that. I did not want to be part of that at all. I had a lot of time off as a kid. I did. I managed to convince my mum frequently that I was too unwell for school. And I think at the time I thought I was skiving. But to be fair, I usually did have something wrong. Like I'd have a headache or I'd have a cold. And a very real sense of I can't face school today.
Yeah, you needed that reset. You needed the regulation.
And my mum, to her literal never-ending, I will never not be grateful for this. My mum was always pretty easygoing and just like, you know what, stay home. And I would stay home and I'd play with Lego and I'd watch TV with her, and it'd be lovely, and I'd go back the next day feeling a bit more alive, So yeah, for me, I was always fighting. I wasn't fighting because I'm not a fighter. I was coming up against the system.
You're probably internally fighting.
Internally, right? Yeah, but not like being a big kind of like, right, I wouldn't stand up in a staff meeting and say, I disagree. Occasionally I would, though. Occasionally that autistic hatred of unfairness would boil in me, and I would, even in a big staff meeting, I would have to say something, I remember because I would my heart would be beating, like this, and my adrenaline would be up, and I'd be like, I'd be shaking,
heart pumping out your chest just because
with that feeling of I've got to challenge this, this is not fair. Which I'm sure a lot of autistic people can relate to. You put yourself out of the comfort zone because you've got to say something. This is not okay. Wow, yeah, a lot of memories.
I do. It's interesting because at school I went to an independent school. My parents made the decision to do that because I think they realised that I wouldn't manage in a regular state school. So I was sent to a private school, and I was a day pupil. But even there, I was one of only three day pupils in like the whole 2-year year group. So I was already other, and it wasn't a particularly good private school because I wasn't clever enough to get into the good one that my brother went to. But one of the things was I went on the bus. So my dad would take me to the school bus, put me on the bus. The bus would take me to school. I'd get put back on the bus, and then I'd come home. My dad would pick me up. Had I not been put on a bus every morning, I know I wouldn't have gone to school.
Yeah.
But I had no choice. So I, and I got on all right with the bus driver. So so that made it bearable, But it's interesting when you look back on the accommodations that were made either intentionally by other people or kind of accidentally on purpose by other people. I know that there were big conversations in our house. My parents didn't pay for my schooling, my grandparents did, in a kind of like if we don't do this, she probably won't get any O levels, as was then, or beginning of GCSEs. And and it saved me, and it nearly destroyed me at the same time. So it's that really, but I think now about the lack of opportunity. I know there's a huge privilege with that, but the lack of opportunity just for around choice about where your kid goes to school, just very basic, making a decision about where your child would like to go to high school. You have very little control. It's based on catchment areas and numbers and whether siblings are in that school or not. So you don't have the freedom that we had then in the old days. And parents don't have the freedom to say, do you know what, they're not so good, we won't send them in today. They just don't have that freedom. And kids don't have the autonomy to be able to say, I really hate this.
No. And often we'll feel that they're, certainly, from, if they're anything like me, will feel that their hatred of something may well not be reasonable. Like they hate it, but they don't feel like they can say they hate it because no one will understand or believe or be sympathetic. So I'll just keep it to myself,
I do think sometimes we totally miss, just when we're thinking about school, like you were saying, there's a lot of things going on for kids, and like you think about being like a child or a young person with a brain that's still working out where they are in the world, whether they're neurodivergent or not. all of the things that are expected of you in a school day, all of the times that you're expected to pay attention, behave the right way, have your blazer on, remember your pen, like even for neurotypical kids, that must be a challenge. You just think, my God, we're making this really difficult for our children and young people. We really are. I saw a comment further up that I wanted to ask you. Here we go. If you're up for this, Pete. No worries if not. How do you manage to work in the Victorian type education system? Authoritative or authoritarian teaching ideas now conflicting each other, and the extrinsic rewards are proven not to work. You're a teacher who's seeing what's wrong, but the rest don't. How do we create change? Discourse. Are you still teaching? Do you do any teaching? Okay.
No. I do occasional tutoring, but I don't need to at the moment. So I'm not, because I find it very exhausting. So I'm focusing on writing and talking really. But well, I mean, my teaching career started in 2008. So I started under the last government, and then of course everything changed in 2010. And we saw a huge reversion back to more traditional methods.
Dickensian schooling techniques.
Yeah. And, when I was on Twitter back in those days, I was just purely into talking about education. I had a Twitter account, same Twitter account that I have now. But I just talked about, I just got involved in discussions and arguments about teaching. And there was always this huge argument going on, never-ending fight between what was called the trads and the progressive teachers, which, as far as I'm aware, goes on to this very day.
Yes, as if progressive is some kind of terrible thing to be.
Oh well,
you're so woke. Oh, is that an insult?
Yeah, and of course, as I got more interested in the SEN side of things, I became embedded even further on the progressive side, and having adjustments and flexibility and, not needing every kid to be the same and all this kind of thing, to be met with cries of, well, that's not sustainable. We can't do this. Oh, autism's overdiagnosed anyway, blah, 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 blah. Just the usual crap.
We can't do that for every child. Why not?
Yeah. We can't let a kid wear ear defenders in class because all the kids are going to want to wear them, which to me shows the most disdain for children.
Well-being.
Yeah, well, no, it's the disdain for children as people. It's like, we can't let this kid have them because then all the other kids will want them. That shows that they don't understand kids at all, because actually kids are pretty good at saying, yeah, that kid can have that. I can go with that. That's fine. If you get to know them, and if you treat them like human beings, it's this belief that kids are just fundamentally broken individuals,
selfish who are just out for themselves.
who are just going to try and get whatever they can and trash the place, and it's just horrible. Whereas in my experience, if one kid needs an adjustment, the rest of the class, if you talk to them about it, and actually discuss, will be fair enough. Fine.
And also that idea of we can't, the air defenders thing is a really good example, because I talk about this a lot. I think that neurotypical people can learn a lot from neurodivergent people about what it looks like to take care of yourself and what it looks like. We all have sensory systems that need regulating. We're like the canary in the mine. We're like the barometer for when systems are not, when spaces are not safe for neurodivergent people. That's usually an indication that many neurotypical people would find those spaces difficult too.
Indeed, and increasing, you're right. And increasing them will as things get worse, more and more will be.
We're like the thin end of the wedge. We've had kids who are autistic or otherwise neurodivergent who haven't been able to go to school for 30 years. And now we have kids who are neurotypical who can't go to school. And it's for the same reason. School is just a lot. But also what would be so terrible about having a handful of ear defenders in a classroom, and if kids needed them, just saying, if it gets too much, just pop the ear defenders on. You can still hear us. We'll carry on. Like teaching our young people what it looks like to, have that autonomy, self-advocate, take care of ourselves, and to put those things in place for us so that this is feeling quite overwhelming. I'm just going to put my headphones on, just let myself settle, and then I'll take them off when I feel regulated again. That would be a good thing, no?
It would be incredibly useful. It would be relatively cheap. It would be tremendously easy to manage as a class teacher. There would be no difficulty with it whatsoever. But there is resistance because it's different, and that's all it is. It's different, and there isn't the understanding, because unfortunately, the understanding that teachers tend to have about autism is not good.
No.
It's just not. And
No.
I get a lot of hate for this, but it just is not up there. Same with doctors, same with nurses often as well. The understanding isn't there, and therefore the wrong thing is done over and over and over again.
Yeah.
And it's half the reason why I wrote Untypical. I had these highfalutin ideas that people might read it and therefore just increase their understanding just enough to stop being inadvertently hostile to autistic people.
Yeah.
All I want. All I want.
Yeah, like a bit of a just listen to those of us in the room who have been here for a little while and have worked without accommodations, and let us tell you how that could be different for the next generation.
Yeah,
that's not a big ask.
Yeah.
It's common sense, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's why I get so about when people are like, oh, some of the backlash, and I won't keep you for too much longer. I'm aware we've been talking for an hour. Some of the backlash around well, my autistic child is nothing like you. You're like, I'm not saying they are, but also they are a child and I'm an adult. So I wouldn't expect your autistic child to be like me, an adult, but potentially your child is having some of the experiences that I had as an autistic child. And wouldn't you want to know? Like when your own child or young person can't articulate that because they either don't have the understanding or the vocabulary or just the self-awareness required to work out what's going on for them, turn that into words, communicate that to another person. Wouldn't it be helpful for someone who's had a similar experience to tell you what that feels? Wouldn't you want to know?
Well, you think so, wouldn't you? But yeah, I mean, often it's we're seen as overstepping and all kinds of things, which I kind of get it, I guess, if you're being really like pessimistic and negative about our intentions, but yeah, ultimately, I only really understand what happened to me as a kid now because I'm an adult and I can look back and make sense of it. I had no
you know what you know.
Yeah, and I had no clue what was going on back then. No idea.
Not an idea.
There would have been no way for me to have communicated to my teachers or parents what I needed. That was just impossible. I could do it now, but only because I'm grown up and I know.
And that's why we do need classrooms where those accommodations are offered across the board.
They have to, they have to be offered. We can't have a system where kids ask for them because best will in the world. I mean, God, adults don't know what adjustments to ask for at work. I wouldn't. We need to offer them. We have to say, look, we can give you this, we can do this for you, we can do this, and that way, kids actually have a chance of being, actually, that would really help. I'd never thought of that, but actually, that would be really nice. Thank you so much.
I might try that. Oh my God, this is helping. I'll do that again. Like that thing of, especially when we ask autistic kids to ask for movement breaks or ask for timeout, and if they're an autistic child like you were, the idea of putting your hand up and saying to a teacher, I will be needing a movement break now. No way on God's green earth. Even gobshites like me wouldn't want to do that.
It's too scary. Far too scary.
My son's 18 and he has an EHCP and is in a mainstream college now, although we had a period when he was in specialist. And we had the annual review not so long ago. And one of the things that we talked about in that was his occupational therapist has said that he needs a movement break every 20 to 25 minutes in order to be able to stay on task, which is what we were talking about. You can only work for 20 minutes. And great big conversation in the annual review about, well, how will we do that? And I was like, well, what about you just said to all your staff every 20 minutes, say, who needs to shake their bum? Oh, I don't think they'll say shake your bum, but that's why not just have that embedded in your culture, in your school? Who needs to move their body? We know that everyone benefits from moving their body when they're trying to focus. We know that. So why not do it? It just boggles my mind. There
was I better go in a second, but there was a moment when I was up in Edinburgh for the It Takes All Kinds of Minds conference, and I was on a discussion panel talking about education with some really good people, but I was in a bad frame of mind. And when it came to my turn to speak, they were talking about what needs to change, what needs to happen. And when it came to my turn to speak, I said something like, it's on YouTube, I think. I said something like, frankly, it all needs to be torn down and started again. Because, the issues are so endemic. They're so deeply embedded within what school even is.
Yeah.
that
What children are.
yeah, well, yeah, no amount of polishing can fix this. No amount of surface work can do anything. It needs to be rebuilt from the very core. There is something rotten at the core.
I agree.
That's not rotten necessarily on purpose. It's just when the education system was built, which it was, in the Victorian period leading up to the 1950s, there was no understanding of the fact that different children had different types of brain, and that was actually a really big and significant thing.
And a good thing.
Yeah, there was none of that, which is fair enough. It wasn't known about. I'm not going to have a go at them for it. It's fine. Okay. But now we know. Now we know that this is the case, and we have to do something significant about that. We can't just tweak things. I mean, we can in the meantime, and I'm all about here's stuff that you can tweak in the meantime. But we've got to, while we're doing that, work out how to fix the very core, because that needs significant change.
I agree.
But,
Okay. So before we wrap up, because I know we would go on all day, but I'm getting rosy cheek, which is a sign that I need a break. So couple of questions in the comments. People are asking, you and me, so we'll both answer this. What are you working on at the minute? Are you writing another book?
Yeah, I've had a break. I'll be honest with you.
People constantly demand new content, don't they?
Yeah, with two books. With two books coming out in quick succession, because there was only about 6 months in between them. I've taken a break, but I'm putting together my proposal for the third book right now. I've had conversations, and it's.
Are you able to tell us a little about what it might be, or do you not know yet?
Oh, I know. It's going to be focused on kids, parents, kids, school. It's going to be focused on, it's going to be, that whole ballpark, because I think we need, we've got some excellent stuff on that, obviously, at the moment, but we just need to keep, it's like books are like kindling on a fire, unless you're very lucky.
Tip paper, right?
Yeah, they come out and they flare and then they die, and we just have to keep adding it. I mean, some books don't. Some books continue to sell for a long time. Devon Price is a great example of that. Unmasking Autism, it continues to increase. And one can only hope that ours might do the same.
Well, fingers crossed.
Yeah, generally speaking, they don't. So we just have to keep producing to keep that message, that momentum going. So yeah, I want to add my effort into that field now. So it'll be around that kind of area.
Yeah.
So yeah, but it's a long way off. It's a long way off.
Yeah, I think what people don't realize is the process of writing a book, even if you're, oh my God, it takes forever.
If I signed a contract,
wrote it quickly.
It
takes them 8 months to get it on a shelf from, even if you meet all your deadlines, and that's planned in, So.
Yeah, I think if let's imagine that I signed a contract today, and started writing today, which isn't going to happen. I think it would probably be 2025 before that book came out. I think realistically, maybe very late 24. It takes a long time.
I was really astounded because obviously Your Child's Not Broken was a republish, so it was a really quick turnaround, and I pushed for a quick turnaround because I didn't want it off sale for too long, because we still had the momentum of a new book, and it wasn't off sale for very long at all. The publishers were great, but because it was a quick drop in, there were lots of things that didn't happen that would normally happen with a publishing house. Like getting it into bookshops was a freaking nightmare. It was available for bookshops to stock, but I've spent the past 8 weeks going into Waterstones most weekends and crying because I can't find my book. Found it this weekend.
There's nothing worse than that feeling. I hate it.
It's the best. The best feeling. 2 things that I enjoy doing in Waterstones. I like going in now and finding my book and moving it so that it faces forwards. And then on the way out, I like to turn all of J.K. Rowling's book upside down or put other things in front of them. And then I go out happy. I'm like,
I just always offer to sign the copies, hoping that it might.
I didn't know you could do that. So someone said that to me. Oh, you should have signed it. I was like, I can't just get a pen out and start writing in books.
I mean, certainly ask first, because otherwise, you could be anybody.
Go to the thing and say, hi, I wrote this book. Would you like me to sign it for you?
Exactly.
And then you can sign it and they'll put a sticker on it.
They do.
And then my brother was like, oh, a signed book is a sold book. I was like, right, so I have to do that now, from now on. I was just so delighted to find it. I made like 3 TikToks because I was so excited.
Whenever I go to a new town, I always check out the Waterstones. And to be fair, more often than not, I've found a couple of copies. And
I am finding it now. I think it took a little while to get it into the distribution. But then I'm also in that thing of, do I buy it so they replace it, or do I leave it for someone else to buy? I can't just keep going into bookshops and buying my own book. That's so sad. Like, so it's quite weird leaving it on the shelf, like walking out. So you are thinking about writing something else. And what else have you got in the pipeline at the minute? What else is going on for you?
Oh God, good question. Yeah, I mean, my daily life really is writing stuff for LinkedIn and Instagram and like social media stuff, but also I just do a lot of going off to places and talking about autism to people. So going to schools, going to businesses, and that's what my kind of weekly routine
bread and
is
butter
built
stuff.
on. It is, yeah. So I've been working an awful lot with Warner Brothers recently. With the TV side of things in the UK, so talking to the offices that are behind TV shows. I went to talk to the cast and the crew of The Repair Shop, the TV show where people get things repaired. Lovely, warm little show, which I really love, and I was really happy to get invited to talk. So I do a lot of that kind of thing, and I think I might be going to Spain in November, perhaps. The Spanish equivalent to the National Autistic Society has invited me to do a keynote for them, so that'd be quite nice. That'll be a trip. So yeah, and I'm going to I'm going to a really excellent school up in Birmingham for their training day in September, to deliver like training on autism to them. I'm going to a private school in the day after near Reading. So it's that kind of thing. That's what keeps me busy during the day, and it's much better for me because I have days off. I have days where I can just decompress.
Yes, for sure. People are talking about what books they hide in Waterstones. I am thinking I've got 2 books in my head. I'm just working out which one to write first. There's a book about being an unidentified autistic child, neurodivergent child, and the experience of that, because I would not have ever been diagnosed. Asperger's as a diagnosis post-dates my leaving education. So I didn't exist before. So so I might write about that. And I am going to write something with my son Theo, who's trans, about our experience as a parent and child in a gender non-conforming home. But we're waiting. It's not a good time to be too public about that stuff. As a young person, I don't mind. People can say whatever they like to me, but he is not it wouldn't be safe for him right now. So
it's a very hostile world at the moment,
Yeah. I mean, it's needed, but you've got to it's one of those things where it's a safety decision right now. Yes, so yeah,
absolutely, yeah.
I've enjoyed this so much, Pete. Thank you.
Yeah, me too.
I knew we'd get on. It's a good job in it. But please, people, go and find Pete. I'm sure people know where you are already. They know where you are more than they know where I am. Your book is called Untypical, and it's published by, I think I've got a framed picture.
That was the present that they sent me for publication. Bless them.
Cute. That's nice.
Yeah.
And it's published by
HarperCollins.
Amazing. And my book is called Your Child Is Not Broken, and it's published by Bluebird, which is an imprint of Macmillan. Go and buy our books. Particularly go and buy our books from independent bookshops. That would be amazing.
Yes, that would be. And if they haven't got them, then ask for them. And
get it in.
Yeah, because the way that bookshops work is they only stock stuff they think will sell. So if you want to see books that you like in bookshops, they've got to be bought.
You have to ask for it. Yeah, it's very interesting when you get the insight into how publishing works.
Yeah.
We're just another cog in the capitalist wheel of
sadly
people trying to make money off the stuff that we make. But
a lot of money as well. We don't see a huge amount of that money. But there we go.
People are like, you must have made a load of money on your book. No.
No.
Yeah, I think people would be horrified if they knew how much we made per copy. Anyway, whatever.
I worked out my first book. I think I got something like 70 pence per copy.
That's what I get now, roughly. But I did get an advance, so
yeah, that's the thing. The advance enables you to live while you're writing, doesn't it? So yeah, that was the
it does. It does, and I'm forever grateful. And actually, I think we're both probably the same. That we definitely want to get paid for our work.
God, yeah.
The value of our work. And if you were writing a book to make money, you probably shouldn't write a book. Like it's not the way to not the way to riches.
I mean, one day I would love to move into fiction. I really would. I think I would. I would be delighted to. It's difficult. I mean, I was talking to my agent and my editor at HarperCollins about this the other week, and they both said it's perfectly possible. Like Matt Haig, for example, flips between fiction and non-fiction all the bloody time. That's his whole thing. So I think it is possible. I just want to get my legs under the table a little bit more firmly first. But I'm going to. I want to do some fiction. I love storytelling. That'd be fantastic.
Oh, I'd love to read a piece of fiction by you. Oh, how exciting. Okay, well, lovely. Thanks for joining me. Stay on. I'll end the broadcast. We'll do a little bit of awkward autistic saying goodbye, and then we'll call it a day. Thank you, everyone, for joining us. Share this video. I'll go and pop it on YouTube, and we'll see you all soon.
Yep, thank you. Bye.